news around basketball right now pertains to a former Celtics player, Aaron Baynes, out in Las Vegas currently, working out for a bunch of teams. According to, I think Bullpet had it. I think other people have had it too, but C's were there. They were watching the workout, and Bullpet, I think in his latest column, mentioned that the connection between Baynes and the Celtics makes a lot of sense because Boston's looking for one more big man for their roster. I think that's the only thing they need right now at this point. Thomas Bryant spurns them to go to the Lakers. Have fun, whatever. Don't care. Thomas Bryant would have been nice. I'm not trying to say he wasn't, but if he's going to get a chance to start, that's obviously going to be a way bigger deal for Thomas Bryant. The ability to cash in on the next contract after that's much easier when you're playing more minutes. But Boston does have a lack of some big depth on their roster with Al Horford being 36, Rob coming off his surgery and playing through. I gotta admit. Pretty impressive playoff stretch considering the injuries he had at the time. Grant Williams is a smaller guy, so you don't really want to play him too much. Luke Cornett's a great mascot, and his family loves being a part of the Boston Celtics, so we love having that. But Boston surely does need one more big guy, and there's a couple ways they can go. Do you have a favorite, big guy that they should target via trade or signing, minimum sign and bring in here? Because the Baynes thing has a lot of people jacked up and juiced up about it.
Yeah, number one on my list would be Dwight Howard. I'm kidding. I don't want Dwight Howard.
No, I have kicked that around. I kicked it around a little bit in my head, and I just can't get because Dwight has rehabbed his career a little bit here. The last couple of stops, it hasn't been bad. I think it's been like some self-awareness of Dwight, knowing that he's not, Orlando Dwight anymore, and if he can recognize that and harness his stuff to be a more positive player, as like a third big, maybe that like an Andre Drummond, comes off the bench, gives you a couple minutes, blocks some shots, gets some rebounds, throw him a lob or two. But the prime Dwight days are over. But I don't think he's as bad of a character risk as he used to be.
And I'm sure they're going to try to give Cornette a couple more minutes. You don't bring him back if you're not planning on giving him some minutes, right? So maybe they are. And then it's like teams don't want to pay a ton of money for that position unless it's the elite of the elite. And if not, they feel like they can get similar production for guys that can roll to the basket, can play a little bit of defense. But to me right now, I feel like the fact that that's what we're talking about, that's where we're at, where that's the last piece that this team needs, it's pretty impressive, right? Because we're not talking about a big, massive need, and it's something you could address later down the road. Now, if you want to kick the tires on Baynes, I'm all for it. I mean, I trust Brad's ability to judge whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy. He's all of Australia. So if he looks healthy enough to go, I mean, I wouldn't mind giving him a shot. And then the other thing is, if he doesn't work, you can always move on from him and bring in another body at the trading deadline.
Right. So, it's been a while since we've seen Aaron Baynes play. For those of you that weren't aware of the injury history there, tough spell at the Olympics for Baynes. It's actually quite a sad story about how he kind of collapsed in the bathroom and woke up and had I think he was concussed, maybe bleeding a little bit, and he had a really scary injury. Maybe there was potential for some paralysis and stuff, but it wasn't a great one. It's taken the whole year off to kind of rehab from that. If you go back to his last season with Toronto, because he's going to be 36 here, him and Al are similar ages. He played with the Raptors last 18 and a half minutes a game. It wasn't a huge factor, 6 points per game. Wasn't the 3-point shooter that we've seen in the past. So, I'm not quite sure what's there. It's not like they're going to be asking a lot of Baynes or anything, or whoever they bring in, whether it's him or Dwight Howard, or some people have kicked around some other ideas. Who's the guy I'm thinking of? Whiteside. Yeah. Hassan Whiteside. Get a little desperate, but those guys don't play that much, so it's not going to be a huge factor, but Baynes, the familiarity on this team, and the last there's a Tatum people have dug up, Tatum loves Baynes. So if you want to make Tatum happy, which I always think is a good idea, sign whoever you have to do to make Tatum happy to keep him here. That's never a bad thing, but with Baynes, the question is, how healthy is he really? And if he's in good shape and in conditioning, I guess I'm into it just because of what they know about him. They know the way he operates. They know if they bring him in, they'll probably fit their system. And again, he's not going to play a ton. All this is, and because if you get to the later in the playoffs, Baynes is probably not going to play. Okay, but it's more about easing the load on Horford and Rob. And if Baynes can come in and has His conditioning's good. He can at least stretch the floor a little bit, but he's a good locker room guy to have around. I think there's value in that. Some people want to trade for Jakob Poeltl, which I think is an amazing idea. And it reports that San Antonio is willing to move off of him. But that comes back to Wick and being like, all right, Wick, how much in the tax are you willing to pay? Because you saw Joe Lacob last week talk about how he might have, they might have screwed some things up because they might, people think they're willing to pay whatever it takes to win. And so far they've done that, but we'll see with future contracts if they're still willing to do that. Is Boston willing to match that? Is Boston willing to go into the tax a lot? Because getting Jakob Poeltl, that's a starting center that'll be your third center in your roster, which is just a ridiculous luxury at that point.
Yeah, I can't see them doing that. I mean, I would love it too for everything you just say. I mean, his rim protection numbers are insane, and he got that little shot from floater range, that little push shot that is so useful for bigs like Bam Adebayo has it. I mean, that would be an unbelievable fit for the Celtics. I can't see them spending the money. Plus, it's going to cost you something of significance to get him, right? Because, I mean, the guy is a really good player. But circling back to Baynes for a second, after the excruciating loss in the finals, having to get back to the mountaintop again, like that's a long thing. That's a long season. That's 82 games. And having somebody there that everybody likes and everybody, to your point about Tatum, everybody enjoys being around. I do think that that's a positive to have around if he can with the assumption he can give you something. But right. Really what we're talking about, right, is so, the Giannis guys are going to be Horford and Grant. So I guess really the only big you're concerned about in the Eastern Conference is Embiid, right? I mean, that's the only guy you're really concerned about. So that's why, I mean, I know I poo-pooed the Dwight thing, but he would body him up. Yeah. I mean, at least he's got the size, you know what I mean? Like if he's interested and he's going to play his role, which I think to your point earlier, he kind of has embraced that, right? He was a backup with the Lakers and he actually played really well. But that is the type of player that say, okay, maybe he can give you 10 minutes on Embiid if that's what you're looking for from that third center position. So as much as crazy as it sounds, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to bring Dwight Howard in, this Dwight Howard, not Dwight Howard 5 years ago when he thought they should be running like 30 post-ups for every game. This Dwight Howard, he may actually be a useful player for the Celtics, even though he's, the worst personality in the world. It used to be, at least. He's changed. He's matured with it.
Yeah, that's a great point about Embiid, though, because if you think about the bigs, like, nobody can really stop Giannis, but Boston has some guys that can at least, make it hard and difficult for him with certain guys. You have whether it's Baynes or you have Horford and Grant Williams have been, Grant did a phenomenal job in the playoffs. Smart did a great job in the playoffs. But then you have Bam Adebayo. Rob Williams seems to be his kryptonite. It takes away the entire lob threat of Bam and makes Bam, more of a either want to face up a little bit or a little turnaround stuff. He can't be as, athletically imposing as he used to be if Rob's in the game. That's a great point about Embiid. I didn't think about it. Like that's the only other big you really have to worry about in the entire conference. Like if you look around the rest of the landscape, most teams are smaller, or like you're not worrying about the big man in the middle. It's not like, we're going to spend a lot of time worrying about Miles Turner, who might not even be there anyway. You know what I mean? They're not going to spend time worrying about Nick Claxton in Brooklyn. Toronto goes small, and sometimes, they will play 5 wing players because they're so weird. There's really not another big guy around that really, puts the fear of God in you. So if you want to go matchup specific, like we need an Embiid guy, that whoever the best Embiid guy is might be the best way to think about it. And I didn't think about it that way, but that's a phenomenal point, Barrett. I really appreciate that.